It's been pretty good for the most part. There's always issues that arise, but um, as a whole, it's been okay.
Hi, I'm Cody Williams. I am a second year MA student, and I study 20th century Latin America, specifically the history of labor, medicine, and disability in Brazil.
All right. And how long have you been a student at OU?
Well, I actually did a summer here for summer school, and then I did a post-bac in second language acquisition. So with all of that, I guess I've been here 6 semesters over the span of about 5 years.
Okay. And overall, how has your experience at OU been?
That's a difficult question because I think in general, socially, my experience has been rather positive. I think, in terms of formal class accommodations, as a student, I've been very well taken care of and very well received. I think the most difficult thing for me is that people are very excited to say the right things and to make the right gestures.
Sure.
But I think perhaps at times there's not really any kind of self-reflexivity or kind of introspection when people think about the way that they think about disability or medicine or the way that things they say might come across. And as much as I think the university has made strides in accessibility, I think that parking is a huge issue on this campus. And given how large our campus is area-wise, the number of handicap spots that we have is unacceptable. And I also think that the university's practice of charging us to park in lots and not allowing our handicap stickers to supersede the university's payment structure essentially amounts to a tax on my disability in order to both be a student and do my job at the university. But I think the most important thing to me is that a larger conversation gets started on disability on the campus on par with the kinds of conversations we're having around race, around class, around gender, around sexuality. I think because people aren't confronted with the ideologies behind how they think about disability in the same kind of direct way that they're kind of conditioned to talk about things like race and class and gender
Right.
in their classes, people can develop a lot of ableist ideas and a lot of ways of thinking about disability that are harmful and threatening, even if they may not realize it. And so, there are policy issues that frustrate me on campus. And I could go on about those. But more than anything, I think we need to look at what's working and say, this is good, let's keep doing this. But we need to have a broader discussion about how policy and attitudes meet action.
How has your experience at OU been?
It's been good. We get a lot of highly motivated students, and that's really the main thing that makes OU special. OU has, in the time that I've been here, dealt well with the accessibility challenge that they've faced, and I've seen the improvement in the quality of the services that are provided to students with disabilities. It used to be when I first came here, that services to students with disabilities was lumped in with Veterans Affairs and
Sure.
with academic misconduct, which I don't know why academic misconduct should be in there too. But now the Office of Students with Disabilities is focused really very strictly on on that one mandate, although it requires them to have a statewide reach because OU has students statewide.
Right.
So I've seen the services improve even as other things have gotten tougher with the funding of the university budgets. Things they do a wonderful job, and it's nice to see it become much more professional. So that's been a positive.
How has your experience at OU been?
Are you asking me?
You should answer first.
Well, I'm a doctoral candidate in the adult and higher education program. I'm at the dissertation stage right now, and so I've been here a long time. I was here for my undergraduate and my graduate student career. I would say that in terms of challenges, the biggest issues I faced were when I transitioned from high school to OU, not knowing how to advocate for myself, not really knowing how to seek help. I relied a lot on my parents. I didn't realize how much I relied on them until I was here. And so I just wasn't equipped to be a self-advocate. And so I really struggled, particularly my freshman year, but on into my sophomore year as well. Academically, socially, I tried to almost prove myself because I wanted to prove to my able-bodied peers that I belonged here, that I was obviously smart enough and I could do all the things that they did. And that kind of backfired because I think I let my pride get in the way of things I needed to do. Like I stayed up late all the time, played video games all hours of the night, much like a lot of freshmen do, but I didn't take care of myself physically. I didn't take the time I needed to study and do those things, and I didn't know how to ask for help from my instructors. So those are the biggest challenges that I faced, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
My experience, I feel like I've tried to kind of shape my experience and maybe others with disabilities experiences into what I hope is a good experience. Coming here, I was lucky enough to have parents who kept up with all of my medical records and helped me immediately get registered at the Disability Resource Center. So I didn't have to worry about not being registered when something may have came up in my health later on, and I would have missed like a week or 2 weeks of school and wouldn't have had any accommodations to say like it's okay, she has this and this, so it's fine. So since I was had parents who were proactive, my experience, I feel like coming in was pretty good, and I really think it's because I knew about the resources. And so really what I try to do now and hope more people know about the resources to make their experience good as soon as they come in. So I think I've had it a little differently because I didn't have to discover, what I needed here at OU. I kind of sought it out before I came, and it really took a lot of pressure off of me. And so overall it's been it's been a pretty good experience from my personal like disability, but always improvement to be made, you know,
Yeah.
for others. So.
So, some of the things that have affected me are going back, especially to my first semester here in Dale Hall, finding my room numbers, or finding my rooms. The numbers were all on the top of the doors. I could not see them. I have a little bit of vision. I'm legally blind, not totally blind. And so I could see a door number if it's at eye level or close. But when it's above the door, that doesn't really work. And so it'd be me standing in the hall, either jumping, trying to read it, or sitting there with one of my little binoculars. Especially that semester, and something I've had a few times since, is rooms where you have very small desks. I use a lot of equipment and technology to help see my papers, since you don't, in most cases, don't have anything enlarged for you in college classes. And so then having these tiny desks with all this equipment, it gets really cumbersome. My freshman year, there was one class in Dale for my chemistry where they had to give me a separate desk in the room so that I could function the class. And even that was a small table that was still fairly difficult, just because that's all they could find. Other issues, the rooms, you have a big room, and it's difficult to then see. Even with my binoculars, it can be difficult and get tiring to hold a binocular the entire time. Sorry, I'm closing my eyes, it's just but then you have really bad technologies. You have, in a lot of classrooms, they have the camera where the professor can write on a piece of paper and throw it on the screen. But still, in a lot of rooms, you just have bad lighting or bad stuff. So even though they have this newer technology, the image on the screen ends up being very hard to see, to where even in rooms like I have this semester where I'm sitting very close to the screen, I can barely see it, even with my binocular. It can be difficult simply because those binoculars, they're great for looking at something for a few minutes, but then once you go into an hour, 15-minute class, it can tire your eyes looking at through a binocular that long, and it was just sore eyes. There's other things but those are the biggest things I can think of at the moment.
Yeah, I think I've definitely gotten a fair amount of pushback. As I've kind of made disability a more politicized thing, not just among administrators and faculty, but I think the OU community at large is kind of struggling with what it means to think about disability, and maybe kind of surprised by the ways that things come across. So I think I've been a little bit surprised that really intelligent individuals who think about these other issues of difference that I've listed in the earlier part of the interview in a really critical way, perhaps don't apply the same level of critical thought to the way that they think about disability, and may be willing to kind of brush things under the rug and kind of continue with niceties. I think the place where my disability has been most challenging, and faculty and staff have been really useful in helping this, but just kind of being both a student and a worker and being disabled, there are times when my disability can really get in the way of me being as productive as both my professors and the people that I work under would want me to be. In general, all of my supervisors and professors have been really open and kind about trying to find solutions, but I feel there needs to be a broader conversation about kind of the difficulties of doing all of these things together, because at times I will talk about what I need at the beginning of a semester. Things will get complicated and I will have medical issues and things will happen that I haven't thought of.
Right.
So those things aren't addressed, so they end up falling between the cracks. I will give you one example. So my first semester here at OU, I was taking too many classes, and I was also working for the university as an RA for an Oklahoma history class and as a TA for Portuguese. I loved all of the things I did during that semester. It was a lot. And as a result of everything that I had to do, responsibilities that are expected of me, I ended up developing pleurisy just out of sheer exhaustion. And one of my professors, who was new to the university and who was incredibly kind and generous in giving me this option, said, take the incomplete and finish it over the semester, and you can get the grade you deserve and be able to deal with your medical issues. I was so happy to hear that, and I felt so supported, and I finished the class, and I did really well. Except when I got my grade back, I had the grade that I got with an I next to it. Now, at other universities where I've had other medical issues, I've been able to take advantage of an incomplete and finish the grade, and it doesn't appear on the back end of my transcript. What I mean by that is that it doesn't list that I had taken incomplete. It just lists the grade because I have completed this class like any other student. And we're talking about some of the best universities in the country have this same policy. But the way that the policy is set up right now, if somebody wants to take care of their medical needs and also be a productive student and a productive worker, that mark is going to be on their transcripts. Now that might seem small, but think about how competitive our labor market is and how difficult it is to get into great graduate programs like the ones here at OU. I have to be able to answer for those.
Yeah.
And not only does that lead to conversations that I might not want to have, but I think that puts me under a level of scrutiny that's not fair given the quality of work that I do and all of the different things that I and other disabled people juggle. But I think beyond just being a disabled person, I mean, pleurisy, which I developed and created a lot of pain for me, isn't related to my disability explicitly. But it's related to the amount of work and the amount of hustle that I need to demonstrate to be able to do all my responsibilities while disabled. And this policy affects everybody. Imagine if a student had a mental health crisis. Imagine if a student broke a leg in the middle of the semester or found out that they had medical issues that they needed to address that they weren't previously aware of. This affected me because I'm a disabled person that's trying to participate fully within society,
Right.
and my disability as an extra burden. But the fact is that anyone on this campus could be affected by issues of disability and by medical issues that they need to address, and this policy is going to affect them the same way it affected me. And so that's what I mean. The intention behind having the incomplete as an option has a great, the ideology behind it and the principles behind it are really supportive, right? The university wants to find ways for students to finish their classes strong and be able to deal with all of the things, both personal and medical and otherwise, that can come up during a semester and be able to finish strong. But I think the outflow, the consequences of the policy perhaps weren't as well discussed. And that would be one of the areas where, with further discussion and with discussions about kind of where the theoretical and political realities of disability meet the practical everyday, could lead to really productive discussions that benefit not only the disabled community here at OU, but all of us who at one time or another could be affected by disability, or perhaps are just going through the struggles of being productive students and employees and citizens here within the OU community.
In particular, have there been any specific challenges you face at OU regarding disability or accessibility? And if so, how did you personally deal with them?
Well, the major challenge that I would have is simply being close to the places where I teach.
Right.
And I teach now in this hall, Copeland Hall. And when my office was in Dale many years ago, across the way there, I also taught in Dale. So that's the major accommodation that I've needed, and it's been well met by the university. I particularly have a vivid memory of Old Science Hall becoming accessible because I used to be involved with film and it's now called Film and Media Studies. It used to be called FVS, Film and Video Studies, and they were in that, and then they were on the top floor.
Oh boy!
And I'd have to walk up that. There was no elevator. There's an elevator now. I mean, that's a huge that's a huge deal.
Right.
So I've had a good experience as the Students with Americans with Disabilities Act has become more recognized as legitimate. Institutions like OU have been able to meet the challenge well. I think it seems that the tougher challenges that we face now in terms of disability and education have to do with, on the one hand, very severe disabilities, much more severe than mine, which may require a much higher level and more expensive level of accommodation.
Sure.
But the other part, too, is disabilities that are invisible, emotional disabilities, psychological, psychiatric disabilities, which people still tend to think of in a very old-fashioned way as there's something wrong with you. That's not, the something wrong with you is not a proper framework for thinking about disability. And also dealing with students who are on, say, the spectrum for autism is a brand new challenge for the university, for me, for all of us, because we're at the very beginning of what will be a long process, and we're trying to figure out what can be accommodated, how can it be accommodated, what can't be accommodated, where's the boundary, and how do we know? And those things you can't sit in an office, or if you're a legislator, just write into a bill. Partly you have to try.
Sure.
And have experience and have the people, both the people with disabilities and the people who are their allies and their supporters and the people that help make them have access to the world. You need their guidance, and often a law cannot, as much as we might try, no law can think of every possibility that it might be required to consider. So it's a challenge, but it's a good challenge, and I have felt that my presence here in terms of disability issues has been I've been glad to be here and be of service where I can. It's interesting, the first event that I ever went to that was just about disability was only a few years ago.
Here at the campus?
Yeah. we've reached a point of critical mass in terms of numbers of students.
Right.
That we're one of the interest groups, one of the constituencies within the university community, and I've been here for as I say, it'll be 24 years, and only in the last few years has there been a disability, an event that was just about disability, not some other issue, but it was entirely about disability. That was very exciting to be part of that. And it's also been nice. There is another faculty member with a disability. He's in the law school. His name is Brian McCall. You might look him up.
Okay.
He's new to OU, but he and I take the same. We take card access, which is a program. Which is a ride service funded partly by OU and partly by the federal government. It gives transportation to people with disabilities who can't drive. Also, as the number of people with disabilities on campus has increased, I haven't had to be the person all the time who addresses these issues, and that's been good too.
Yeah.
So things were getting more mature.
I would say that it's certainly it's improved since I've been here. Just the overall awareness level of at least making students more aware of what's available. I think a lot of that's got to do too with just how easily we can access technology now. Whereas like when I was an undergrad, sort of like fast internet was just becoming a thing. Like we didn't have smartphones. We had these old cell phones where it took about an hour to type a text message. So it's just, things are a lot easier to access now.
Yeah,
I feel like the word has gotten out about what the DRC does and how well we can accommodate. And the staff here is really good too about helping students.
It's good to hear, yeah.
And I think how does the university do well regarding accommodations? I always take into account university regarding accommodations in regards to physical accessibility is a completely different field than student accessibility to academics, and so they're while we're making strides, I feel like on the academic accessibility side with I feel like a more transparent disability resource center. I feel like it's becoming more easy to talk about and people are willing to talk about it because we are trying to stop the stigmas that come from disabilities and even mental health. I think when it comes to physical accessibility, there's a lot of things that I see on campus that I wasn't aware of until it was brought to my attention by someone else, and this could be just really bad curbs or not a visual or audible aid for crosswalks. Little things that can really build up in time, or elevators not working is a huge one. All those things build up and make a student with a disability interaction with school 10 times more difficult than it needs to be. So those accommodations that really deal with maintenance and keeping up, that's not completely we have to have it this legally or we'll get in trouble. They just kind of get pushed to the side, and that's something that the university can really work on, in my opinion.
What does the university do well regarding accommodations?
The DRC, the Disability Resource Center, does a pretty good job. At least in my case, I know that that's not everyone's situation, but in my case, they've been very helpful for helping me. That they are the ones that helped get that separate table back in that freshman class. I'm able to test in the DRC, and so they are able to get me large print tests, so I'm not having to sit there worrying about a magnifying glass throughout my tests. They're let's see, they also have, in that testing environment, it's a reduced distraction, so it is just, again, helpful for that. Let's see, other things. They, if there is, I have never really had this problem specifically, but I know that this is something that the DRC does do well with, is if someone is having trouble, like a professor is not liking the various things, like, something else they do is, say you have a professor that has a lot of PowerPoints, you can, that they're not wanting to post online, going through the DRC, they can tell the professors to send those PowerPoints to you specifically. Of course, that's with the understanding that you do not share them, of course. But that is very helpful to a student using the DRC. And so if you have a professor that's not wanting to work with that. They also, something I have never taken advantage of, but is I'm a note taker. If someone, say because of vision or some other reason, is not able to take good notes in class, or the simple fact of, or the activity of taking notes would be too distracting, to where you could not pay attention to what's being taught, they can provide a note taker where they will request someone else in the class to share their notes. So yes, there is a number of things that the DRC can do, also allowing students to use technology. That is something that I have done, where say you have a professor that it does not want to let you use your computer or piece of technology in class, the DRC can talk to them about letting people, like in my situation, use technology in class to assist. Of course, demonstrating that you're not playing computer games, but that you are using it for class. Like I mentioned, the doors, the numbering being up on the ceiling in some cases. I have seen some rooms in Dale this semester where they have started posting it on the doors, but it's posted with paper. So that's going to help someone like me with low vision, but that's not going to help someone who is blind and a Braille user. So they do need to go through and get Braille put up on all of those. They need more accessible parking around, something that hasn't really affected me, but I know, talking with the DRC, they have, I know that is something that was, the DRC a few years ago was trying to move in, buildings, but they were having a lot of trouble because they could not find any other location on campus that offered accessible parking. They eventually did find a place, but there's a lot of areas on campus where it's not very accessible for, there's not accessible parking. There are, let's see, sorry. Just for navigating campus, it can be very difficult for someone, especially who is blind, to navigate first. Definitely the crosswalks, say at the South Oval, but on a number of others, they need to fix. They have audible crosswalks, but it's quite often that they are not. You will go up to them and the audio will be broken. That was very common. Especially freshman year, I was using those a lot more than I am now. But they break down a lot. They're pretty well broken as much as they are working. On the bus station, there on OU campus, there is there's a sign that lists how long it'll take the buses to get there. There is a button on that pole that will give an audio reading of that. That as I have seen in the last year, that has only worked once when I've tried it, and I try it pretty well every time I go up there. And so it's been broken for the bulk of the last year. I was very excited about a month ago when I saw that it was working, thinking it was fixed, and then the next day I went and tried it and it didn't work. A little disheartening. And a number of things like that make it a little easier to get around campus. It would be nice to see those functioning better. And just as complicated as OU campus can be, it's even more complicated for someone who can't see, and I feel there could be something done to make it a little easier. Some kind of, even as cheesy as it sounds, a map system with a tactile way to help someone new to the campus learn it in a different representation than just hearing, oh, walk until you see this building. Well, that doesn't help when you can't see.
The Disability Resource Center is wonderful at taking care of disabled students' academic needs. I have no qualms there. In large part, they have been able to address all the issues that I have in a timely and kind fashion that gives me the support that I need. But I think some of these larger administrative things that I've mentioned, for example, the handicap sticker issue that I mentioned earlier, and the difficulty of parking on such a large campus, or the fact that eyes appear on transcripts, even though people have perfectly legitimate reasons for taking more time. Those things need to go away. Not only because they're an extra professional and economic burden on people with disabilities, or people that could at one time experience disability or medical issues, but because they contribute to a culture of shame and silence that I think is not productive. But I think Aparna and different initiatives like the ableism workshop as well, all of these initiatives like the Humanities Forum talk that was proposed, or that occurred, that happened, but we didn't have very good attendance on that. That was an event that the Humanities Forum put forward to start a dialogue on disability history and disability studies issues more broadly, but it wasn't well intended, so we couldn't have that dialogue. Now, the ableism workshop that came along with the workshops on race and gender and sexuality and sexual orientation here on campus, that has started making some inroads. But even that is just a voluntary exercise.
Right.
So we need to find ways to have well-attended and intentional discussions about disability, and have people that are willing to come and have full-throated discussions, but also administrators that are willing to come forward and make changes. Because ultimately, I believe our society has learned in the majority of the cases to talk about disability in a way that is inclusive and seems to embrace diversity and the particular accommodations and atmosphere that disabled people want and that society supposedly wants for us.
Right.
But because we've learned to talk about these issues in a way that is largely societally accepted, we've kind of assumed that they're worked out because they're able to be talked about in a way that's acceptable. And I should say that just because we've learned a nice way to talk about disability does not in fact mean the implications of what we say are not, or what society says are not violent or harmful to the disabled community. My point is rather that we've learned to talk about disability in a very politically correct way that seems to check all the right boxes. Not only do I not think that's the case, but even if people on this campus know how to say the right things, that doesn't mean they're thinking through, one, the consequences of their words, but also, two, the consequences of different policies that directly or indirectly affect and make more difficult the lives of disabled students, faculty, and staff here on campus.
In terms of the university, is there anything specific that they need to improve on, or just continue on their current pace? Or
Well, we need the issue of autism and other disabilities, we assume that, you know, that the universe of disabilities is stable, you know,
Right.
that it doesn't change over time. And that's not necessarily the case. As medical technologies improve, as human understanding changes, there are going to be situations that were not previously envisioned that we'll have to think about how to accommodate. So as long as the leadership at OU is committed to remaining up to date, and I believe they are, you have to be open. And, you know, as with everything else at the university, everything else in public policy, you can't do things without a steady commitment of money.
Sure.
And that is a problem in every area of our public policy right now.
Especially in this
Particularly
state.
in Oklahoma, yes.
Correct, yeah.
You know, we need to look at, you know, you can't just cut all the time.
Right.
And the addition of resources is not an admission of failure. Sometimes it's the necessity for success. And I think as long as the public sector in Oklahoma teaching social work is malnourished by being underfunded, we'll never really do as well on all of these issues, whether it's disability, learning disabilities, class size, all of the things, they all are interrelated.
For me, I mean, it's been a while since I've had classes as a student, as in the dissertation stage. I'm not in class anymore, so I'm not on campus a lot anymore. But I will say, like, I always notice wherever I go, like, how accessible an entrance is, and how accessible and like a bathroom stall is. Some are better than others. I mean, it is what it is. Some are better than others. I know that certain buildings have limitations because they're older, and there are certain laws, you know. So, but, you know, one thing that I always do is kind of map out where I'm at, so I know where to go if I need to use the restroom. There were times when I was an undergraduate, if I had a class in the South Oval, and I knew I wasn't going to be like in a particularly accessible place, I would roll like back to my dorm in between classes to use the restroom, just to ensure, you know, that I had time, I knew what I was doing. So you just kind of have to be almost strategic about what you do, when you do it, where you go. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of my, like, the physical ones are things other people have brought up to me, and then I started to notice them everywhere, I feel like.
Yeah, you become, I mean, for me, I almost don't notice them as much because something that's inaccessible, honestly, for me, has been pretty commonplace. You know, I've been on campus so much that, you know, I don't, like, nothing sticks out, and if it is inaccessible, I'll raise it up as an issue, but a lot of times I just won't worry about it because I'm like, well, you know, I can make do with it. Like, I'm, you know, there are other things I'm more worried about.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's a huge, like, just that thought process of, like, well, this is fine even though it isn't fine.
It's right. I mean, you just kind of, like, there are certain things that kind of stick out more than others, and if I feel like, I mean, I'm trying to be more aware of, like you said, things like Braille, because there are different things other than physical disabilities that impact people. So just being more aware overall of what challenges people may face, I think that's key for anyone,
Yeah. And
disability or not. So.
yeah, because I feel like a lot of students, I mean, regarding like students at OU with disabilities. If something happens to you, whether it be, a faculty does not, go along with your accommodations, or, you can't get into a room because it's inaccessible. It's kind of just like, okay, well, I don't have time to deal with it. Like, I'm a student, I have a lot of other things to do. And I think the biggest thing that I wish more people would try to do is our goal of self-advocacy for everyone, and knowing that like this experience that you have had may have happened to someone else as well. Mm-hmm. And if you speak up and speak out about it, you never know who you may help.
Yeah. It's not necessarily about helping myself.
Yeah.
It's about helping someone else. And I think like I try to maintain that perspective. I think Catherine does too, but it's a challenge. I think.
Definitely.
Especially as far as my vision, it's gone pretty well. I haven't had any professors that were just downright, oh no, I won't cooperate with it. Now again, that is the DRC is it's kind of written in that they have to work with you, but I have never had any professor that was really dragging their heels on that. Of course, there's always going to be things that you're going to have a homework assignment or have some situation that you don't like, but never specifically anything that was related specifically to vision, to my vision, that presented any major problems. At least anything that I considered to be unfair. There was never anything in that way.
Overall, things have been really well. I think in a number of my classes, I've been able to start useful conversations on not only disabilities' place in society, or not only disabilities' place in history, but also disabilities' place within society and some of the questions that we need to be asking. I also think, in general, though my students may be surprised to see a disabled person as a TA in class, once they've had an opportunity to interact with me, to hopefully see all of the energy, passion, and planning that I put into teaching them an exciting class, whether that be for the U.S. History Survey or within the Modern Languages Department, once they interact with me, kind of any questions or concerns or frustrations tend to minimize. That's not to say that certain students may not be frustrated by the ways in which my disability might hinder things like grading or getting feedback back to them. But I think in general, what might start out as surprise or frustrations in many cases leads to a new understanding of what it means to be disabled, and that disabled individuals can be in these positions of teaching and learning in useful and productive ways that usually surprise those around me. I think the one difficulty I've had is that people need to learn to push through. What do I mean by push through? Their experiences are changed, their perspectives are changed, or maybe they're not, maybe they disagree with me. But I think disability is a profoundly existential issue. And I say that because things like race and gender and class, those are things that people can affect with their choices, perhaps. But they're things that they're usually confronted with, and then they aren't confronted with them unless they deal with them. Disability, on the other hand, can affect any of us at any time. So someone might, feel that the way that their gender is perceived doesn't match with their personal reality. But their choice to change that is a choice, and those who aren't discriminated against on the basis of those issues normally aren't confronted with them unless they choose to engage. But I think disability is a more threatening issue because any of us can be affected by our medical and personal circumstances in ways that allow or cause society to view us as disabled. And I think because of the profoundly existential nature of what I'll call the disability question, for the purposes of this interview, causes people to start to have meaningful, interesting, and impactful conversations, but perhaps to stop halfway, because things start to get really uncomfortable and really personal in a way that people can't just say, oh, well, that's their problem, let them deal with it, or let's talk about them. No, I think the issue of disability and the way in which it's perceived and interacted with in society has the potential to affect us all. And I think that's why conversations at times can start to reach meaningful places, but pull back in equally intense ways that we may or may not see in other categories of difference.
Overall, how have your interactions been with students through your time here, faculty, and other staff?
They've been really good.
Yeah.
And I have gotten better.
Okay.
I think that the generation of staff that's working here now is better trained, more professional, and that's good for me. And I think as people with disabilities become more visible in society as people who are going about their business, I still have people who try to pray over me, which I refuse. People come up to me and want to pray for me, and I don't have any time for that. They should pray for themselves and let me pray for myself, or not, whatever. When I first came here, people would come up to me and want to, hold my hand or touch me, we're not doing that. And that's become somewhat less, although it still happens. I was so funny, about a month ago I was having lunch with a colleague of mine, and I said, this used to happen all the time, it doesn't happen anymore. And as I was leaving the union, some joker, came up to me and said, can I pray over you? And I said, no, you absolutely cannot. So you run into that.
Sure.
It's a little bit of old-fashioned thinking.
Right, yeah.
Well-intentioned, but also has a lot that needs to be corrected. Intentions are fine, but the framework that it comes out of needs to be replaced.
I feel like most student staff and professors are open to learning about disability issues and things like that. But again, I think it comes back to being a self-advocate and speaking up for yourself. Because I know that was one of the things, particularly when I was an undergrad, I kind of expected what happened in high school to carry over to college, and that's not the case. People aren't going to run up to you and be like, what do you need? Are you okay? You have to approach them, and I think people are willing to listen for the most part. And most of my interactions have been positive, but it's been on me to bring that up if I have an issue.
Yeah, it definitely varies student to student, varies professor to professor. But I think a big thing to note is there is no faculty training regarding disabilities like there is with, what are the other training?
There's a little bit of faculty training,
not
I believe. Yeah.
One focused on it, right?
Yeah, there's one on ableism, I believe, that actually Dr. Nair she participates in, and that's really good. But I think that the more we have, the better, because disabilities are so comprehensive. Every disability is different. Even I have cerebral palsy, somebody else could have cerebral palsy, and it could be a lot more severe. It could be less severe. So every disability is different, even if they're sort of under the same spectrum. So I think the more education, the better. And obviously, disability can happen to anyone at any point in time. And I think it's good to realize that and have that perspective, because God forbid if you do have a disability, you don't want someone treating you differently because you have it. You didn't have it yesterday. Like, that would not be fun.
So in terms of campus events, like movie nights or football games or free concerts, do you ever attend those? And if not, is there a reason why?
I do, yeah. Accessibility on campus is usually good.
Mm-hmm.
I say usually because sometimes large event spaces in places like Adams,
Right.
or even the lecture hall within physical sciences, I mean, there are spaces that are accessible, but I think we have to think about accessibility more as kind of an environment, kind of an accessibility ecosystem, if you will. Because, for instance, a building might be accessible, but if there's not adequate parking for me to park close to that building, it doesn't matter how many ramps, automatic open doors, or seats that don't require me going up stairs, up or downstairs that you provide. If I don't have an easy and matter-of-fact access to that space,
Right.
as far, not just in the physical building itself, but thinking about campus on a broader level, then those minute location by location changes kind of start to matter less.
I've only been to one football game
Okay.
in
How?
my life. I'm not that interested in sports.
Okay.
If I can watch it at home,
Might as
I'll
well.
do that. I have cable at home, so I don't come on campus much for entertainment.
Okay.
I have gone to some. Occasionally, they'll have musical performances that I'll come to, and they are, OU's very good about accommodation.
Yeah, I mean, I go to particularly a lot of football games. I would like to go to more basketball games, but honestly, in basketball, it's not as accessible. Lloyd Noble is a much harder place to get into. I think it's 42 years old, and so it's just dated and it's difficult. Football, I've been to so many, I've kind of got it down to a science. Like the last 2 years, I've taken a shuttle from Lloyd Noble to the stadium on game days because it's easier in terms of parking, and there's a lift on those shuttles, and it's very easy, and they drop me off right in front of the west side of the stadium, and my seats are on the west side. I'm a season ticket holder now, so that's been nice. I feel like the new renovations in particular are very nice. I don't have to go far to use a restroom, which is nice because I used to have to basically miss half a quarter if I had to go during the game. So I had to go to the other side of the stadium to use a restroom. So now I don't have to do that, which is positive. So and I feel like particularly OU did a good job with the accessible seating because you can see really well. It's not a bad. You can see the field. I don't have to worry about people standing up in front of me and blocking my view. So that's nice. It's really positive.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I don't know. To add to that, I've noticed just that you always have to put for accommodations on the basis of disability, with every event. But I've brought up some things that I've learned about events or just event publicizing is putting a text description or an image description, or trying to see if things are screen reader
yeah.
accessible. There's a whole other different world of technology accessibility that Laurel works on, who's a DRC employee here. And so I think with events, you always have to, there's so many factors that go into play. How do people know about it?
Right. And it's just, I would like to see us get to a point where we don't have to put that at the bottom of the flyer.
Yeah.
to where everything is already done
Mhm.
and we don't have to worry about it. Like it becomes second nature to ensure that people are accommodated on the basis of needs. So
It shouldn't feel like oh no, we have to do this, or like a burden. Like it should just be something that like you don't even have to say like do you need accommodations,
Yeah.
because it should already be.
but that's part of where
Yeah.
more education, more awareness comes into play, and so you know, we just constantly have to strive to be better. I mean, nothing's perfect, but I feel like OU's come a long way, and it'll continue to get better
Yeah.
as we move forward. So.
I have been to some of the free movie nights on campus. I have gotten there thanks to friends who can drive and are willing to take me along. And in those situations, I've generally been able to we've gotten there early so I could sit close and whatnot, and that has worked out pretty well. But yeah, really just the movie nights I've gone to, but I haven't had any issues with them.
Is there anything that you would like the OU community to know, or to start a discussion about, or anything that we haven't covered in this interview that you think the community is not aware of enough? If that makes sense?
Yeah.
You covered a lot,
I
so I
think
just
I-
figured, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think I've brought up a lot. I think I want to say, for those who are willing to have a good faith, open and honest conversation, I am more than happy to have those conversations in an open, kind, and respectful manner in order to produce change. But when those conversations begin to be negative, discriminatory, or aggressive in tone, I will defend what I believe are my rights and my principles regarding these issues. In other words, I'm more than willing to have open and honest conversations and understand where people are coming from in terms of their perspectives, fears, and frustrations about disability. But the moment in which those spaces of dialogue close and start to become hostile, destructive, or aggressive towards my continued participation fully within the community, I will vociferously defend my rights and my principles in order to make sure that not only I receive the treatment that I want for myself, but that those that are not as willing or able to speak up along similar issues are equally treated well. That is not to say that I'm going to be violent or mean-spirited in anything that I do, but just that at a certain point when dialogues are trying to be created and they can no longer be fostered and have policy outcomes, I've got to think about how I'm going to make it through my day. And that may include some reasoned and specific confrontations on issues in ways that I'm not being treated well. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to be rude or put down your point of view. That means that I'm trying to make sure that I make it through every day. And that if meaningful discussions can't happen, I'm able to advocate for myself in a way that warrants my continued full participation within this community.
I think in the same way as I said earlier, we shouldn't think of the universe of disabilities, of what we call, of those conditions that we label disabilities, as being finite or stable. As our knowledge about the human body and its potentials, about what human intelligence is, and how it's fostered, as those things continue to be pressed forward, there will be other human conditions that you and I can envision that will be up for accommodation. We should be ready for that, and our society should always be ready for that. The other thing I would say is that there is no one disability experience. I have cerebral palsy. and cerebral palsy covers a very daunting and wide range of conditions and limitations. And so one person's experience of that particular disability, cerebral palsy, is not going to be necessarily the same as mine.
Right. And
the reasons for that may not be visibly evident. So it is important that we not, we have to make some generalizations in order to provide services and get a baseline understanding of what is needed. But it is very important that we not think in terms of one disability experience that is shared by all the people who have cerebral palsy, or all the people that have polio, or all the people who suffer from bipolarity.
Is there anything that we did not cover in this interview that you would like to add?
I think the biggest thing is specifically the transition from high school to college. I think that someone who is legally blind, totally blind, or some level of disability is going to have an IEP in high school, and that is going to generally end up being different than what the college campus is willing to offer. The college campus is, of course, trying to prepare you for adult life in the working world, whereas in the high school IEP and lower grades, they are trying to help you graduate. And so there was a number of things in my IEP that I could not have survived without in lower grades and middle school. But then I started to realize as I got through high school and towards my senior year in high school that I had to kind of not use those accommodations. There was a number of accommodations that were a little too generous to me. And because I kind of self-noticed that once I got, even with that, once I got to campus, once I got to college, there was a few accommodations that I did not have anymore. And that was a little bit of a jolt. That was a little, because it was different. And so I think that just for both high school students in their senior year and freshmen coming into college, I think there does need to be something to help ensure that they can kind of transition to that without anything, because if I had not kind of started to limit myself, I would have had a even harder time in my freshman year, as hard as a freshman year always is. No one has fun that first semester, but that is something that I think, I don't know a specific answer to that, but I think that is something that needs to be thought about, because that is a bit of a jolt. Also, a lot of the solutions that they have to help people, especially with vision loss through the DRC, is technology based. And I know that there are some people that, because of their vision, they have not gotten a lot of technology training, even though technology can be very beneficial for low vision. And once they get to campus, they have a hard time adapting to that technology, and I think there could be something more on campus open to helping just instruct students on technology and how they can best use it, ranging from very specific technologies to just general cell phone and computer use, because that could help people in general if you just have someone who has not spent a lot of time around computers. Having just some basic things offered to students would be very helpful, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. As much stuff, even just on OU in general, D2L, or no, that's not used anymore, but the ozone and stuff like that, Canvas, it's something that students need just help if they have not had that instruction before. I think that's all I can think of.